Welcome back. The Civil and Local Government Staff Association of Ghana, CLOGSAG, has this afternoon vehemently rejected the Constitution Review Committee's recommendation for the Controller and Accountant General's Department to be made independent from the Ministry of Finance. The department currently operates as an implementing agency of the Ministry of Finance, executing government accounting functions, among others. CLOGSAG insists it should remain administratively within the ministry rather than be structurally separated into an independent constitutional body. Speaking at a press conference in Accra, Executive Secretary of CLOGSAG, Isaac Addo, argued that the proposal to elevate the department to an independent status could create institutional confusion and weaken fiscal coordination.
We disagree with the proposals to establish the Controller and Accountant General as an independent or hybrid independent constitutional office. The mandate of the Controller and Accountant General Department falls squarely within the mandate and functional oversight responsibilities of the Ministry of Finance. The CAG operates as an implementation agency of the ministry in executing government accounting, ensuring payments control, and performing treasury management functions. As part of the executive machinery responsible for implementing fiscal policy, the CAGD should remain administratively situated within the mandate of the Ministry of Finance rather than be structurally separated into an independent constitutional body. Implications of making CAG independent. Elevating the department to an independent status could create institutional confusion, weaken fiscal coordination, introduce bureaucratic duplication, and complete efficient financial administration. B. Implication of appointment of the CAG by the Council of State. Furthermore, we object the proposal for the Council of State to recruit, vet, and make binding nominations to the President for the appointment of the Controller and Accountant General. The proposal is at variance with our firm principles of leaving departmental appointments to governing councils who have the necessary institutional memory to select, vet, and appoint on merit basis an appropriate institutional head. Implication of oversight of Parliament over the performance of the Controller and Accountant General's Department. Like all public organizations in Ghana, the proposal for Parliament to exercise oversight performance of the Controller and Accountant General through its relevant committees in accordance of law is welcome. However, the Ministry of Finance should remain the bona fide body to exercise ministerial oversight over the activities of the Controller and Accountant General.
That's the Executive Secretary of CLOGSAG, Isaac Addo. He's also been rejecting the proposal for the Council of State to recruit, vet, and make binding nominations to the President for the appointment of the head of the civil service.
We object to the CRC proposal that the Council of State shall recruit, vet, and make binding nominations to the President for appointment of the head of civil service with the assistance of the Public Services Commission. We recommend removing the special appointment arrangement under Article 193(1) concerning the head of civil service, which requires the President to appoint the head of civil service acting specifically on the advice of the Public Services Commission and align this appointment with the general framework under Article 195 governing public service appointments. For clarity, Article 195(1) of the Constitution states that subject to the provision of this Constitution, the power to appoint persons to hold or to act in an office in the public service shall vest in the President, acting in accordance with the advice of the governing council of the service concerned, given in consultation with the Public Services Commission. If the intent of the constitutional reform is to depoliticize the public services, enhance professionalism, and promote meritocracy in the appointment of a head of civil service, then we propose amendment to the Article 195 for the Constitution that should read as follows. Subject to the provision of this Constitution, the power to appoint persons to hold or act in an office in the public service shall vest in the President, acting in accordance with the binding nominations of the Governing Council of the service concerned, given in consultation with the Public Service Commission.
Dr. Daniel Appiah is joining me this afternoon for a conversation on the back of this. He's a member of the CLOGSAG Review Committee. Grateful for your time this afternoon, Dr. Appiah. You were part of the committee that made these strong oppositions to the Constitution Review's recommendation for the Controller and Accountant General's Department to be made independent from the Ministry of Finance. Why?
To you and then to our viewers. Right, so you are right. I was a secretary to the CLOGSAG CRC Review Committee that's looked at the CRC report and then to review it and then to consider whether the recommendations that are contained in the report will help to strengthen the public service in terms of enhancing efficiency, effectiveness, meritocracy, and then improving service delivery for the ordinary Ghanaian. And one of the things that we looked at is the recommendation concerning the Office of the Controller and Accountant General's Department. Now, when you look at the CRC report, they immediately go ahead to give recommendations for the creation of the Controller and Accountant General's Department as an independent constitutional body or a hybrid independent constitutional body. They do not give any reason as to why this step should be taken. But if you look at the methodology that the CRC have indicated in their report, they stated that they adopted a problem-solving methodology for their recommendations. Problem-solving means that you first must state what exactly is the problem that you are seeking to cure, and then you come with the solutions. But if you read the recommendations concerning the Controller and Accountant General's Department, they have not stated any kind of problem for which they have made their recommendations. So the question that first one asks is, what exactly is the problem that they seek to cure by making the Controller and Accountant General's Department independent? Then we look at this 2010 CRC report to see whether something like that was also made in them in order to understand the rationale or the problem. We don't find anything in the CRC report in 2010 that give any kind of problems affecting the CAG, that's the Controller and Accountant General's Department, that occasioned the creation of this department into an independent agency. What one rather finds is that in the 2010 report, they mention a number of organizations in Kenya's constitution that have been created as an independent agency. So that made us to look at Kenya's constitution, which was made in 2010. What is it that they've created in there? And in Kenya's constitution, you will see that they've created an office called the Controller of Budget as an independent constitutional body. And then the rules governing that particular office, almost word for word or sentence for sentence, almost replicated in Ghana's CRC report. I mean, the most recent CRC report. And so that raises the question of, why are we replicating something or almost replicating something from Kenya when we don't know what the problems are? And so if CLOGSAG say that they have strong grounds to reject, certainly we agree and then we support, because the first basis is what is the problem? And nobody knows what the problem is. And if we are really trying to create a constitution that will make our constitution better, one should first know what are the problems at the end of the day that one is trying to cure. So that is one.
Is CLOGSAG ever going to accept the department being independent if those problems are enumerated to you?
But, well, first is that nobody knows what the problems are. And
that's why I'm saying that if you are made aware... If you are made aware of those problems, would you accept it?
Is to know the problems for one to actually even dialogue. The starting point is to know the problems for one to actually dialogue, for one to discuss whether the problems themselves are really problems, and whether these problems, at the end of the day, whether there are no better solutions to deal with the problem. So that is one. And so I will urge the CRC, if they know the problems or they have problems that they gave to their experts, the experts that they spoke to or they talked to for which they have made their recommendations, they have to make their problems clear. And then the other aspect is that in terms of our public financial management architecture, in 2018, Parliament actually enacted the Fiscal Responsibility Act. And then that was December 2018 when that particular act was enacted. If you read the parliamentary answers, if you look at the debates that happened in Parliament, there was almost unanimous agreement or consensus between both the NPP and NDC side that there is a need for Ghana to create an independent fiscal council that will supervise the Ministry of Finance, that will analyze also as to whether the Ministry of Finance and the Minister of Finance are going overboard in terms of the management of our public finances. And so that particular recommendation has been accepted by this current Constitutional Review Committee's report. However, what they reject is that that council should not be created within the Constitution, but it should rather be created through an act of Parliament. The question that raises, which CLOGSAG has rejected, is that if you look at the Fiscal Responsibility Act that was enacted in 2018, and then it is the only act that gave authority to Parliament to censure the Minister of Finance and remove that Minister of Finance from office or recommend his removal if that Minister of Finance mismanages our finances beyond a certain threshold.
Right.
But COVID-19 came, and then the same Parliament passed now an act now to suspend the Fiscal Responsibility Act. Are you now proposing that the same Parliament that has suspended this Fiscal Responsibility Act and it has never returned to this country, we should give that same Parliament the power to create an independent fiscal council? And then when that council now begins to bite and work effectively, then that same Parliament will go and pass an act now to once again suspend the council.
Right.
And so there's that consensus that to make to be able to have a more efficient and prudent financial management system, we need an independent fiscal council that has got constitutional backing or is situated within the Constitution and will have that authority to actually manage and supervise and monitor the activities of the Ministry of Finance, the Controlling Accountant General's Department, and other public financial institutions. That raises the bar higher than one trying to say that let us make the Controlling Accountant General's Department independent. What exactly does it cure? Nobody knows, apart from one saying that is almost a replication of what is in the Kenyan Constitution in any case.
Right, Dr. Daniel Appiah, thank you very much. He is part of the review committee of CLOGSAG.
Thank you very much.
Let's talk something else, because the Environmental Protection Authority has intercepted an additional 1,070 Chanfang machines concealed in separate containers at the Tema Port on Tuesday night. The latest seizure comes just weeks after the authority uncovered more than 200 Chanfang machines hidden in 14 shipping containers in a similar operation. According to the EPA, the scale of the latest interception is deeply alarming, particularly as the machines were reportedly destined for mining districts across the country. The authority says it is intensifying surveillance at the ports and tightening controls on the importation of Chanfang machines as part of broader efforts to curb environmental degradation, especially the pollution of major water bodies. The crackdown comes amid the EPA's ongoing pilot initiative to restore polluted rivers. Only weeks ago, the authority deployed ionic nanocopper technology to treat the heavily polluted River Brame in the eastern region at an estimated cost of $200,000 per kilometer. The EPA maintains that Chanfang machines remain a major driver of the destruction of water bodies through illegal and unregulated mining activities. Officials insist the authority will no longer have an oversight of that. Well, the Deputy CEO of the Environmental Protection Authority, Professor Michael Ayanga Adongo, has been providing details on the interception.
While we were there today, 3 more containers were intercepted, and that takes the number well to over 1,200 as we speak. My team is still working on the documentation of the timing, verifying national security. But I tell you, the grand risk going in there, and we feel that at EPA, we need to intensify our presence at the ports and then ensure that our people are at the front line looking out for these things and not merely relying on tips and intelligence. So this is a wake-up call, and we are all alarmed by it.
Right, and beyond seizures, what preventive measures are you putting in place so that we do not record these incidents again?
Yes, I spoke with CEO yesterday. She instructed that I go to the ports to verify. So since Tuesday, I've been going there every day to do verifications. And one of the instructions was to begin to work to prosecute the importers, because this importation was done in contravention to the ban we issued on the 29th of October 2025 that placed a ban on the fabrication, importation, distribution and sale of small motorized dredging machines, popularly called Chanfang, in Ghana. And this is also in line with our environmental assessment regulation, LI 2504.
Right.
So we believe that we have enough legal basis to prosecute whosoever imported these things in the country. So we are working with the agents, asking them to name the importers, identify them, and we'll let them face the law.
Pakwesi Shandov is the Director of Communications at the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources and is joining me in the studio for more on that. Pakwesi, we've seen this before. Weeks ago, we saw the EPA conduct another, raid or whatever you'd call it at the same port, and now we are seeing this one. Huge numbers. Where are they coming from, first of all?
Well, so we have begun investigations promptly into the source, because you would recall that somewhere in October last year, I think it was even September last year, the Sector Minister, Honorable Emmanuel Amakofi-Boa, let's not forget that apart from being the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, he's also currently the Acting Minister for Environment, Science and Technology. EPA falls under that ministry. He was very clear, and a directive was issued to that effect, that there is effective immediately a ban on the importation of Chanfangs. But the thing about the Chanfangs is that beyond the importation, there is also domestic expertise that facilitates the production. So across board, the directive was very sweeping, that we were going to deploy men, boots on the ground, to ensure that the domestic production will stop, as well as the ban on the importation. And so if we are seeing this now, logically it presupposes that there is some kind of, if you like, inappropriate transaction ongoing. It is only an investigation that would be able to uncover and unravel that. And that is why we have begun the process accordingly, to be able to establish where exactly it is coming from. And when the investigation is able to unravel that, we'll put the outcome, yes, or the findings out right. Accordingly.
The Deputy CEO of EPA, who I spoke to some few hours ago, did say that this was a tip-off they got from National Security.
Absolutely.
Who owns this?
Well, we would have to first of all commend the National Security for the bravery and then, the oversight responsibility they exercised. To the question of who owns it, I did just say that an investigation will be able to uncover, because, you would know, you indicated just a while ago that they were destined for mining districts. That is particularly very problematic, because in the first place, a ban has been placed on the importation. If somebody or any group of people are able to ensure that they come in and they are destined for mining communities in the first place, that certainly is a big problem. Let me put on record that the Sector Minister has indicated to me that, like I said earlier, an investigation will be conducted to unravel who owns it, where it is coming from, and if there are any sanctions that have to be applied, they would be meted out accordingly.
Will the name of the person or the individuals who own this ever be made public if the investigation establishes that they so and so owns it? Because I'm asking this question because people are saying that there are political forces behind this who would rather, this is seized and the authorities will just cover it and say that we were unable to establish the owners of it, but we've seized it. That's why I'm asking that question.
No, not too long ago, if you look at the configuration and architecture of the National Democratic Congress, two leading characters within that particular enterprise. So they're talking about the party's national organizer and the party's third national vice chairman. When it became apparent, or allegations were widely circulated that they were involved in illegal mining activities, their names were mentioned. The point I want to make is that if the government of the day can publicly identify and highlight persons who belong to the ruling party, then whose name cannot be mentioned under the circumstances. And so whoever is involved, whether you belong to any social profile or class, so long as it's an illegality which the sector minister has categorically condemned, the investigations would certainly fish you out, because as the president has been saying himself, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, in this time and in this era, there is no shielding of anybody who is involved in any illegal mining activities whatsoever.
Weeks ago, we saw a similar incident happen at the Tema Port. Where are those machines?
It's a matter of national security. Of course, you saw that it's the national security who actually gave the tip-off. So matters of this nature, number one, they are very sensitive. And so due to the sensitivity of the issues, we hardly disclose where they are being housed. Because when you begin to give out those pieces of information, you help those who would want to negotiate backdoor, have other intentions to know exactly what to do. For example, if I told you that all of them were being kept at your house, Ken's house, you become a subject of interest right after this particular conversation. And we do not want that, because more often than not, it can obstruct the investigative protocols. But the assurance is that they are currently in good custody, and when the investigations are concluded, we'll be able to know who is behind, where they are, and if there are any appropriate sanctions to be meted accordingly.
I was actually asking about the ones that...
The
early ones.
Yes, all of them.
Are they still in the custody of government?
Yes, absolutely. They are in safekeeping. Where exactly they are is what I'm not sure is worth or could be disclosed. I don't think it's...
And the people behind...
national security
The people behind that have also not been identified.
The investigations are ongoing. So, Ken, let me...
Has it not taken too long?
Absolutely not. Let me say something. Let me put on record or attempt to explain the complication or the complexity with trying to fish out the big fish, or the principal instigators and facilitators of illegal mining. It's not as easy as one may assume, all right? Because the syndicate is a bit complex. So, for instance, in this particular expose, you may check the records and identify and see that, for example, permit me again to use your name, Ken was the one who was doing the importation. But when you get Ken and then you start digging and digging, you realize that all the while, Ken has just been a distraction, all right? And there are actual layers of individuals who are really, really involved. And so anytime you want to unravel these matters, it is not a very simplistic effort.
Okay.
It takes a lot of time, tact, and intelligence. And that is why more often than not, we are not able to promptly mention names. But there's a procedure to do that. And so let's just keep our fingers crossed.
What happens if your investigations conclude and you find out that indeed these were machines that were being sent to Galamsey sites? What happens to those machines?
So, like we did for the water pumps, all right? And indeed, for all other earth-moving equipment that we have confiscated or embargoed in one way or the other, all of them become, first of all, exhibits for prosecution. But for those ones that we can repurpose and deploy to other fruitful ventures, we'll do that accordingly. So for these ones like this, I want to believe, Chanfangs, we have already said that we do not need them particularly in our mining communities. If then we are able to establish through the investigations that, look, these things truly were meant for destructive purposes, the action that will be taken will be proportionate to the distraction that the intended distraction that the investigation is able to uncover.
What has NIMOS been up to lately?
Well, 3 major operations have been conducted within the course of this week. I'm sure that in the course of the day, this particular day, we'll flesh out the details of those operations. But beyond the routine operations to the Galamsey communities, we had been saying that the consideration and the proposition of NIMOS is to deploy full-scale 24/7 uninterrupted surveillance to all the relevant flashpoints where illegal mining is very prominent. We've been hammering that for a long time, but the good news is that hopefully by the end of this quarter, which of course effectively is the end of this month, we're going to see that full-scale deployment. What that in practical terms means is that the NIMOS personnel will be stationed at all the flashpoints without moving. They wouldn't have to move. They will stay there as, if you like, everyday watchmen who are being paid, because it is becoming the case that when NIMOS goes into an area, they move into any enclave and perform an operation, a swoop whatsoever. By the time they are leaving, you realize that illegal miners will return. And that is because not to implicate anybody, I'm saying it advisedly, it has become very clear that the local authorities or the local enforcement agencies are not some of them, I should say, are not complementing the efforts of NIMOS. Because look, if NIMOS goes into a community and then NIMOS is able to execute an operation, the expectation is that the local enforcement outfits there should be able to sustain the momentum and keep the enforcement in order. But sometimes NIMOS goes, before they even return, realize that the thing is escalating. So the 24-hour uninterrupted deployment, full scale, is the way to go. And the sector minister has given the blessing. Honorable Aman Kofi-Boah authorized it. The finance ministry has also made certain promising commitments to that effect. Indeed, the chief executive officer of the Ghana Gold Board, Mr. Sami Gyamfi, has also made certain commitments and assurances to that effect. And so we should see that by the end of the first quarter.
Pakwesi Shandov is the Director of Communications at the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources. Thank you very much. Awula Sewa is with Eco-Conscious Citizens Ghana. Awula, grateful for your time this afternoon. Over 1,000 Chanfangs seized at the port. What do you make of it? Unfortunately, it appears that we've lost Awula Sewa on the line, but the story we've been bringing you is that more than 1,000 Chanfang machines have been seized at the Tema Port. Authorities are telling us that this was an intelligence-led operation, and the indication they got was that these machines were heading to mining sites in Ghana. We're trying to connect the phone lines with Awula Sewa, who is with Eco-Conscious Citizens, to give us her thoughts. And you just heard Pakwesi Shandov speak to us. He's the Director of Communications at the Lands and Natural Resources Ministry, telling us that investigations are currently ongoing. And according to EPA officials, the scale of the latest interception is deeply alarming, particularly as the machines were reportedly destined for mining districts across the country. And the authority says it is intensifying surveillance at the ports and tightening controls on the importation of Chanfang machines as part of broader efforts to curb environmental degradation, especially the pollution of major water bodies. And the crackdown comes amid the EPA's ongoing pilot initiative to restore polluted rivers. Only weeks ago, if you do recall, the authority deployed ionic nanocopper technology to treat the heavily polluted Brim River in the eastern region at an estimated cost of $200,000 per kilometer. Awula Sewa is back on the line, I understand. Unfortunately, we've lost Awula Sewa once again. We'll try and reconnect the lines to speak to her, to pick her thoughts on this disturbing story. In the meantime, though, the Vice Chairman of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC Working Group 1, Professor Nana Ama-Kluche, has called on African leaders to significantly scale up investment in climate science research to inform evidence-based and pragmatic policymaking in addressing the escalating climate crisis. According to her, although climate change transcends national boundaries and represents a global systemic risk, several African countries lack the critical data sets to drive effective mitigation and adaptation strategies.
The three-day conference under the theme Methodologies, Metrics and Indicators for Assessing Climate Change Impact and Adaptation brought together leading climate scientists, policymakers and technical experts from over 33 countries. The objective is clear: to harmonize and strengthen global frameworks for measuring climate impact and climate-induced vulnerabilities. Speaking at a media engagement on the significance of the conference, Vice Chair of the IPCC Working Group 1 and the CEO of EPA, Professor Nana Ama-Kluche, lamented the persistent gaps in climate data across parts of Africa.
Climate change is a reality. It's happening. And the rate at which it's happening, it's unprecedented. Scientists in this community are already overwhelmed and still trying every day to understand the changes and the impact it's having on the people, especially the vulnerable communities. And so we all have to be aware, especially the leaders in Africa need to be aware and come up to speed with the changes that are occurring and put measures in place, including updating policies, including investing in the capacity for people or experts in the areas to update their reports and do scientific publications. So all of these publications will now inform discussions we have at COP, the Conference of Parties at the UNFCCC. Some countries do not have adequate information in terms of data and scientific reports of the happenings in the area. This affects decisions that we have on the tables.
Meanwhile, Minister responsible for climate change, Isifu Seidu, noted that Ghana remains aligned with global climate goals, urging the conference to carefully come up with broad-based recommendations.
The key areas for consideration in this meeting include developing metrics and indicators for measuring adaptation effectiveness, assessing the feasibility and effectiveness of adaptation, identifying enablers and barriers to climate change adaptation, integrating climate adaptation into broader development processes, and also enhancing support for adaptation in developing countries. Ghana is committed to climate action and welcomes the global goal on adaptation framework. We are working to develop indicators to guide our adaptation efforts and enhance support for vulnerable communities.
On his part, co-chair of IPCC Working Group 2, Bart van de Haak, said the Accra Conference is a deliberate effort to help the IPCC better understand the real and lived climate impact confronting countries in the global south, including Ghana.
Despite the big efforts there are on reducing global carbon emissions worldwide, we do see that emissions will continue to be there, temperature will continue to grow, and we cannot afford not to adapt. That is our means of survival. And I also think that it is particularly in global south countries where climate impacts really materialize very prominently. And so this is a place where we can be much closer to the heart of the need for adaptation and of the need to get the information that is helping us. And so we have on purpose indeed located the meeting here, but on purpose also invited a lot of experts from Global South to bring their wisdom and experiences to the table and not to only rely on Global North paradigms and resources.
By the close of the conference, participants are expected to consolidate key recommendations to shape the next steps on climate adaptation. Carlos Caloni, JoyNews, Accra.
The shea tree, also known as the northern cocoa, is a major source of income for thousands of women in northern Ghana. Unsustainable logging, charcoal production, bushfires, and land clearing are, however, destroying shea parklands in the Upper West region. The loss of these trees is not only threatening livelihoods, it is also worsening climate change impacts by reducing forest cover, increasing heat, and accelerating land degradation. Rafiq Salam has more in today's Climate Evidence.
One of the endangered tree species of the Northern Savannah Ecological Zone that grows in the wild. Despite its huge economic benefits and potential, its existence is however under threat as it faces extinction from unsustainable logging, charcoal production, bushfires, and land use changes. The main suspects in this criminal act are hunters, farmers, and women. Valentin Danor works as the head of research and learning at non-governmental organization Punet North. He averred that there is a decline in business in the shea butter industry, and as a result of that, many people have lost their jobs.
Shea gives us a lot of money. Annually, I think about $100 million that the country gets from shea. It's a global industry that actually is worth about $2.75 billion. And so an industry like that is very important to us.
Acting Apo's Regional Director of the Environmental Protection Authority, Jonathan Pierako, equally is not happy about the wanton destruction of the shea and other economic trees.
As they burn the trees, the younger shrubs and those that are not able to survive it, they will die. And at the end of the year, if you see the population of younger trees that probably could have been grown to bigger trees will be dried up, and our women will go and harvest it and go and make their heaps at home. So we take what we want to use it, and minimize the unnecessary felling.
A typical example is here at Peri. Years ago, this facility is owned by Sumbawera shea butter processors. It used to be filled to the rafters with energetic women busy preparing shea butter. The narrative today, however, is different.
We are not getting the nuts like the first time. The first time we can get 2 or 3 bags, but now, because they are cutting the trees, you get 2 or 1.
But because of the cutting of the trees, if we find how to get rain to sow is a problem. That's it. That's affecting. That's part of the climate change.
Sule Musa calls for stringent measures to put a stop to the cutting of shea tree for economic purposes.
If I go and tell someone, don't cut the trees, the person will tell me that I haven't got the right to tell him to stop cutting. But when we put bad laws on it, and even the police are sitting down, seeing people with motor king cutting the trees to market, but they don't seize them.
So just like government came up with a regulation to stop the felling of rosewood, we can do the same for shea. These are economic trees that we want to keep. So we did that for rosewood, and we know that it was a battle. In why here we had attended many meetings where issues of rosewood came up, where people accused chiefs, others accused politicians, but all the same, eventually we were able to curtail the felling of rosewood.
I bumped into these women who are busily manually producing shea butter in an old jaded shed. We were almost at the final stage of producing the shea butter when we arrived. The shed is located just at the entrance of a shea butter mill owned by Said Abdullahi Famana. Growing up, the production of shea butter has been the preserve of our mothers. So anybody who is cutting down a shea tree is akin to killing a fellow human who should not be allowed to go scot-free, he said.
Important for JoyNews, Rafiq Salam. Wow.
This story is brought to you by JoyNews in partnership with CDKN Ghana, University of Ghana Center for Climate Change and Sustainability Studies, with funding from CLARE R4I Opportunities Fund.